On the night of August 21st, 1986, 1,746 people died in one valley in Cameroon, without a single wound on their bodies. There was no fire, no flood, no attack. The victims simply lay down where they stood and never got up again. The killer was invisible, silent, and heavier than air. It came from the lake, and 4 decades later, it is still there. Lake Nyos sits in a remote corner of northwest Cameroon, a deep crater lake surrounded by quiet farming villages and green highlands. For generations, local legend had warned of spirits living inside these lakes, spirits that could rise in the night and take whole villages. August 21st was a market day. That evening, villagers in Nyos, Cam, Cha, and Subum cooked dinner and settled in for the night. Around 9:30, people heard a low rumble from the direction of the lake. Some stepped outside. Most thought nothing of it. Then came a strange wind. Survivors later described a smell like rotten eggs and gunpowder, and a sudden, crushing warmth in the air. In the village of Nyos, oil lamps flickered and died one by one, as if the air itself had stopped feeding them. People collapsed mid-sentence. Families fell where they sat. Farmers dropped in their doorways. There was no time to run or even scream. A white mist, dense and low, rolled down the valleys away from the lake, hugging the ground like a slow, silent flood. It moved faster than a person could run, spilling across more than 20 kilometers of hills and valleys in under an hour. By midnight, villages had gone completely silent. Not one dog barked, not one insect chirped. Nothing in the valley was breathing. The handful of people who survived that night would wake the next morning to a world that made no sense at all. Joseph Nkwain woke around 9 the next morning, too weak to stand, unable to speak, with a strange haze over everything he saw. When he finally reached his daughter, she was gone. So were his neighbors. So was almost everyone he had ever known. Outside, the silence was total. Whole families lay together in their homes, looking for all the world as if they were only asleep. Around the villages lay 3,500 dead cattle, birds fallen from the trees, and even the flies on the animals were dead. There were no wounds, no blood, no signs of panic or struggle. Many of the victims had died in their beds, mid-dream. Roughly 4,000 survivors fled the hills, many with burning lungs and strange sores on their skin. Injuries no one could yet explain. Survivors stumbled between the houses, calling names that would never answer. Some later said they believed the entire world had ended. And behind them, the lake itself had changed. Its clear blue water had turned a deep and unmistakable shade of rust red. The surface was littered with debris. Vegetation on the southern shore had been ripped away, as if a giant wave had scoured it. When word reached the outside world, doctors and soldiers flew in expecting an epidemic, a poisoning, or a massacre. They found none of them. The army sealed off the valleys and dug mass graves. Many of the dead were buried before anyone could record their names. The bodies told no story that any doctor could read. Whatever killed 1,746 people had left almost no evidence behind it all. Within days, scientists from around the world were on the ground, walking through villages where the only sound was their own footsteps. They tested for every known killer. Radiation, negative. Chemical weapons, negative. Disease, negative. Poisoned food and water, negative. Nothing fit. The victims' blood showed no toxins at all. These were healthy people in a healthy valley whose bodies had simply stopped. Then the investigators saw the pattern. It was elevation. Everyone in the low valleys had died. Everyone on high ground had lived. Survivors described lamps dying on their own before the people did. For the scientists, that single detail narrowed everything to one suspect. A flame does not need a wound to die. It needs oxygen, and one gas smothers flames, sinks, and hugs the ground. Carbon dioxide, the same harmless gas in every breath you exhale, and in every bottle of soda. In small doses, nothing. But in high concentrations, CO2 displaces oxygen entirely. Above 10%, you lose consciousness within a minute. The valleys had been flooded with it. The smell of gunpowder and rotten eggs? A known trick of the human brain when it is drowning in carbon dioxide. The math was staggering. killing 4 villages that fast would take over a cubic kilometer of gas, released in a single night. Where could that much gas possibly come from? All at once. The answer had been sitting in a government file for 2 years. In August 1984, at Lake Monoun, 95 kilometers to the south, 37 people had died overnight on a lakeside road. The same way. Officials blamed a terrorist attack with chemical weapons, and the case was quietly closed. But one volcanologist refused to believe it. An Icelandic volcanologist, Haraldur Sigurdsson, tested Monoun's water and found it saturated with carbon dioxide, rising from the volcano sleeping below. He warned that Cameroon's lakes could erupt with lethal gas. His report was still awaiting publication when Nyos proved him right. Both lakes sit on the Cameroon volcanic line, a chain of volcanoes where magma constantly leaks carbon dioxide up through the rock. At Nyos, that gas had seeped into the lake bottom for centuries, dissolving into the cold, still water like gas into soda. Crater lakes this deep do not mix. The heavy gas-charged bottom water stays trapped beneath the surface layers year after year, building pressure. By 1986, Lake Nyos was a sealed soda bottle more than 200 meters deep. Something, that August night, finally twisted the cap. No one knows what the trigger was. A landslide, a small tremor, a slug of cool rainwater. The evidence died with the witnesses. Within minutes, the lake ejected a fountain of water and gas perhaps 100 meters high, and a wave scoured the southern shore. The deep water that surfaced was rich in dissolved iron. Exposed to air, it rusted. That is why the lake turned red. Science finally had its answer, and a terrifying new problem. The gas was already building again. Lake Nyos was quietly reloading. Measurements through the 1990s confirmed it. Carbon dioxide was still pouring into the lake bottom, thousands of tons of it every year. Left alone, Lake Nyos would erupt again. The only question was whether it would take decades, or merely years, to recharge. The old legends suddenly read differently. Stories of spirits rising from the lakes, maybe folk memory of eruptions history never recorded. For years afterward, soldiers kept the valleys empty. Survivors lived in resettlement camps, waiting for someone to make their homes safe again. A French engineer, Michel Helbwachs, proposed a plan that sounded insane: defuse the lake like a bomb by making it erupt on purpose. In 2001, his team sank a pipe 200 meters down to the lake floor and primed it once, like starting a siphon. The gas-charged water rushed up on its own and burst from the surface as a fountain 45 meters tall, running day and night. It was the first attempt in history to disarm a killer lake. For nearly a decade, that one thin pipe protected the entire valley. 2 more pipes were added in 2011, and slowly, year by year, the pressure in the deep water began to fall. But the engineers found a new worry. The natural rock wall holding the lake in place is weak, and it is eroding. If that wall ever fails, millions of tons of water could tear through the valleys toward Nigeria, releasing whatever gas is left. Today, people are moving back to the fertile shores of Nyos. The lake is being tamed. But Nyos was never the one scientists feared most. There are only 3 lakes on Earth known to hold this kind of explosive gas: Nyos, Monoun, and one more. Lake Kivu, on the border of Rwanda and Congo, is nearly 2,000 times larger than Nyos, and it holds more than gas. Its depths hold an estimated 300 cubic kilometers of carbon dioxide, plus 60 cubic kilometers of methane, dissolved rocket fuel. Along its shores live more than 2 million people, including the entire city of Goma, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And unlike Nyos, Kivu sits beside one of the most active volcanoes in Africa, Mount Nyiragongo, pronounced Nyiragongo. In 2021, Nyiragongo erupted, and lava flowed toward the lake. Volcanologists watched, knowing what could happen if it disturbed the deep water. The lava stopped short. This time, sediment records suggest Kivu has overturned before, roughly every 1,000 years, sterilizing everything around it. Rwanda is now extracting Kivu's methane to generate electricity, quietly draining the weapon while keeping the lights on along its shore. It is a race measured in decades between engineers with pipes and a lake that has already proven what patience can do. Lake Nyos taught the world a new kind of disaster, a limnic eruption seen only twice in recorded history, both times in Cameroon. And it taught something darker. Nature's deadliest weapons are not the loud ones. They are the quiet ones, waiting beneath still water. The survivors of Nyos still live with one unanswered question. What, on that ordinary August night, finally pulled the trigger? No one knows. Next time, the file moves to the Ural Mountains. 9 hikers cut their tent open from the inside and ran barefoot into the snow.